All right, so let's see. Sounds good. Thank you. Wow, that didn't pick up the bondsman phone. Okay, good. All right, we're through with our technical difficulties. We'll get started here, and we should be getting some more people join in. So everybody knows me. If you know where I'm streaming from a new Facebook channel called Kingdom Lum Small Town, right? Because I'm running the YouTube channel Small Town Underground, and I've had so many problems with censorship moving forward, trying to get messages out, trying to live stream. And the other day I did a little scientific experiment with 3 different forms of different Facebook posts at the same time on 3 different gadgets trying to live stream, and found out that I couldn't live stream on 2 computers, but I could do it on my phone. So getting around the censors, I just made a whole new public channel, and so they have no idea, I guess, until they find out. But
yeah.
Anyway, it's been extremely hard to share information, as you all know, as you see what's going on in the news, you see what's going on with Twitter and just everything else, government censorship. But we're here, and streaming this is Silent No Longer, the group, and then we're going to keep it live on the other public channel that I got, and then we're also going to post the video as an episode to Small Town Underground. So, as promised, this is Colton Moore. If everybody doesn't know Colton Moore, a lot of people do know Colton Moore, and I'm going to let him talk for a minute and tell us where he's from, what he's doing, and he is running for our state Senate position, the one that Jeff Mullis is leaving. And so we welcome him to this broadcast, and so tell us all about yourself.
Well, Roy, I appreciate you putting all of this together. You've amassed a lot of followers, a lot of patriots, and that's a very honorable thing to do, to get the message out there. I appreciate you contacting me, helping me get the message out there. I mean, we're all fighting for the same things, and the more people who are aware about it, we're all motivated if we can just stay organized and get to the polls and vote. So, I'm running for state senate here in Northwest Georgia. That's Dade County, Walker County, Catoosa County, Chattooga County, and all of northern Floyd County. So pretty much from the Garden Lakes community of Rome north to Fort Oglethorpe.
Okay.
I live on Lookout Mountain, about a mile south of Clallan Canyon State Park. My family's been there for 5 generations. I hope we can be there for another 5 generations. This is the last best place. If we don't keep this, and we don't keep our freedoms here, we've got nowhere else to go.
Right.
I tell people the only other place I've been to in the world that's more free than Georgia would be Montana, but the problem is it's negative 30 degrees there in the winter, so it's not really livable.
Now, what did you do for work? You're an auctioneer.
I'm an auctioneer, so hey, to get it down, what do you pay to get it down? $10 on the bidder, able to buy, $20 down, $30 on the bidder, able to buy. Yeah, so
wow, that's awesome.
The common joke is auctioneers and politicians, they like to talk fast and take people's money.
Right.
But I served in the state legislature, and I love taking people's money on the auction block, but I love saving people's money in the legislature.
That's good.
And I'm a hard fighter for limited government, and a lot of people say, well, that makes you ineffective. And I always ask, what's the definition of effective? Being effective at what? Increasing taxes, increasing spending, or increasing regulation? Personally, I think we have too many regulations, and I think we have too many taxes, and ultimately too much spending. So that's kind of where I come from.
Okay.
Sell cattle, heavy equipment, but
Now, you've served before, right?
yeah. So I served Dade County and Western Walker County in District 1. I beat out a 10-year incumbent. The guy who I was running against had only passed 1 piece of legislation in 10 years, and I'm just thinking, my goodness, like, we see everything that's coming upon us, and we need a little more energy in that legislative seat. Now, I got there, and I ran the campaign very, by the strap of my boots, so to speak. I never got a list I was very new to how to run a campaign, but still got elected. And one of the things I promised hard for was constitutional carry. We needed to see constitutional carry passed. And I get to the state legislature. I find a fellow named Matt Gertler. Representative Gertler and I became roommates down in Atlanta. We looked at legislation together. We were fighting for the same things. It was kind of ironic because I'm from Dade County, which is the cornerstone of Georgia, and he was from Rabun County, which is the other cornerstone of Georgia. So we were these 2 radical North Georgians, as we were called in Atlanta sometimes.
Right.
But I remember when I first signed on to constitutional carry, I was going to go down to the floor of the House and I was going to speak on it. And the Speaker of the House had his assistant there and said, sorry, we don't have enough time for you at the morning orders to speak on this. And all I was going to try to do is just rally up some more co-sponsors. And what was so funny though is she said, well, we'll just have to get you tomorrow. Well, I said, no problem. I'll speak on it tomorrow. Well, what she didn't realize, and I did, was the governor, newly elected, Brian Kemp, was going to give the state of the state the next day. So I got to rally for constitutional carry. The galley was full. All of the media's there. And they're like, oh no, Colton's about to speak on constitutional carry in front of this big crowd. So then all of these cronies and leadership started coming down and they're like, Colton, please don't talk about constitutional carry. And I was like, we're not voting on it today. All I'm doing is asking for people to sign on to it. Please don't, we don't need this right now, but, you know.
Right. It's too political.
Yeah. It was funny. I had the Speaker of the House's chief of staff push me up in a corner and he said, look, I just don't understand you. And I said, well, all there's to understand is we're both from North Georgia and we're both too hard-headed.
Right.
Yeah. So.
There you go. That's awesome. And I remember me personally hearing about Colton Moore as one of the first people. You were one of the first people that were talking about constitutional carry, even before I knew what constitutional carry was. You know, like I said, this whole movement started very organically, and it's just all come together. And now we've been able to get people like Marjorie Greene elected.
Yeah.
So,
no one thought constitutional carry
no.
had a snowball's chance in
No.
nowhere.
No,
And
even after being promised for several terms of previous politicians.
yeah, and it was very simple to explain to folks. I mean, it was a tax on our Second Amendment right, and we were treated like criminals. You had to go in and get a background check, had to pay the $80 tax, get your fingerprints. I mean, absolutely nonsense.
Right.
I remember talking to some Democrats about it. And I was like, well, should we just go ahead and get a permit for you to have a social media account? Should we
Right.
tax your freedom of speech? Well,
Sure.
no, we shouldn't. Well, why not have constitutional carry?
Sure,
So,
I agree. It helps the cause. And keep in mind when I'm a big 2A advocate, right? I mean, I have been. I haven't been all my life. You know, I've always loved guns, but I understand the need of, especially, well, let me back up here. Constitutional republic, that's what we are, right?
That's right.
The more you understand that, the more you realize the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and everything, all government falls under that Constitution. So any part of our Constitution is under attack is a bad thing. But the reason we focus on Second Amendment is because without the Second Amendment, and you go back in history and you realize that, the easiest way to control people is to take away their food and take away their ability to protect themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't have to be a gun nut to understand how important the Second Amendment is,
I mean, we don't have to go too far back in history. Look
Sure.
at 6 months ago, look at Australia.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, I think the only thing that differentiates America from Australia was the fact that we had the Second Amendment.
Yes.
I mean, they were going into people's houses because they made, Facebook posts that the government didn't agree with.
Right.
It was crazy.
China, look
Yeah.
at what's going on in China, and we look at all these other countries that don't have that Constitution, that Second Amendment, and that really is what separates us from the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
And so it's of the utmost importance that we at least understand that so that we get behind it. And I think the misconception, and I've met a lot of people in the last few weeks that are running for office, and they look at not all of them, but a lot of people look at the Second Amendment as just, oh, you're a gun nut, That couldn't be further from the
Yeah.
truth. It's all about the right to keep and protect yourself. And as we go through this country and we see everything that's going on in our cities, the breakdowns over abortion, all of these things, and yes, we have tragedies like Buffalo, New York, and things like that get overly hyper politicized,
Right,
of course,
right.
by the media. And I'm not here to discuss that, but what I'm saying is that we cannot deter from holding that line of the Second Amendment, right? Because we're going to constantly get attacked, and even though we have constitutional carry, we're going to still continue to get attacked in this state.
Nothing frustrates me more, and I think it should be a big warning sign to anyone looking at a political ad, is when you see, and especially Republicans, right? They say, well, we love the Second Amendment, and they're out on a hunting trip or some picture, right? And to me, that's why aren't you talking about the Second Amendment for what it is?
Right.
And too many politicians are afraid to talk about what it is, because to talk about what it is suggests that we might have a terrible time in our country, right? We might have another war.
Right.
But to me, the Second Amendment prevents those types of things. just like what we were talking about with Australia. To me, I mean, the Second Amendment is very clear to be a protection against a tyrannical government, both domestically and foreign. It's a national security issue, right? The age-old quote of the Emperor of Japan in World War II said, you know, can't invade America because there's a gun behind every blade of grass.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're right. So it's very important, and I think that you are the strongest two-way candidate that we have and have had for quite some time. So we appreciate that you're running on this ticket, you know, because we need all the help we can get up here. I will go one step further. Like I said before, I've not always been a pro-absolutist on the Second Amendment myself. I've always, when you critically think about things, you think about gun reform and all these other things. But I have come to the understanding that you cannot give up the constitutional right, and you have to get behind it 100%, or else it's just the same as every part of our society. They just keep inching forward.
Oh yeah,
and taking
slippery slope.
A slippery slope,
Right, absolutely.
So I don't want anybody to think that, you know, I like to discuss about guns because we're not all gun nuts.
Yeah.
I understand the Constitution more than anything, and I think that you do too. And like I said, you were one of the first people with Matt to push for constitutional carry, and now so here we are. We have constitutional carry in Georgia.
Yeah.
And there's talk about the Constitutional Preservation Act, I believe, is coming.
Well, I think that's the next threat on the horizon.
Okay.
And we've you know, a lot of people don't understand what red flag laws are.
Yes, let's go into that.
Yeah, but a simple way to talk about red flag laws is, you know, I could disagree with you on something and I could think you're crazy, and I could go to the government and I could say, you know, Roy's crazy, red flag. And the government could come in without any due process and take your weapons.
Right.
To me, that's like the ultimate slippery to the slippery slope.
Right.
Because anyone can accuse of anything of anybody, and still there's no due process.
Right.
But I don't think red flag law legislation will come in as just, here I am, red flag law legislation. It's going to be slipped into other bills.
Okay, absolutely.
And we've got to be very hawkish about looking at that and making sure, basically what I plan on doing, and it'll prevent a lot of the monotony of being a hawk and trying to find it in other pieces of legislation, by just creating a piece of legislation that says if any Georgia legal entity, be it law enforcement or whoever, tries to enforce a red flag law type legislation, be it from the federal government or from the state, that they would lose funding.
Wow. Okay.
And any state government agency wouldn't be able to enforce it if the feds, they would have to bring in their own people to enforce it themselves.
Okay.
And I think that's the best protection that we have against that threat. And I think that's the next threat on the horizon.
That's awesome, and I'm glad that you brought that up because, like, I try to stay positive, so I'm not going to try to throw people under the bus or anything.
Yeah.
This is about you. We're not attacking other people, but I've heard the criticism fairly recently that you were all about the Second Amendment, but you weren't about giving money or ensuring that people get their grants and everything. Something by a comment that you said during one of the debates. So
yeah,
this is not all. This
yeah.
is our future senator here, so we're not going to just focus solely on guns. But
yeah, so that was it was a quote about grants in the Dade County debate, and I made the quote that said, "Don't depend on me for your grants. Depend on me for an advocate for less government."
Right.
And that was a very important issue for Dade Countyans because the last administration in this seat promised the Dade County Commissioners that there would be a lot of grants to build this water reservoir.
Okay.
And the county went ahead and purchased this $500,000 piece of property that us as Dade County taxpayers had to pay for. We purchased the property. About the time I get elected, they all show up and, where's our grant money? Well, go talk to this person, and guess what? There was no grant money. So we now have this piece of property that's been sitting there for 4 years unused, and it isn't going to be usable because there is no grant money, because we've had politicians promise that there's going to be grant money. Grants are something that I think we, you know, especially elected officials, and they're looking at their state senator, and they're you know, they need a lobbyist to help them bring in more grants. But I was talking to the mayor of Rossville the other day, and he's very adamant about getting this grant for these sewer pipelines. Okay, so there's a lot of stormwater drainage that's going into the sewer, and basically they're having to pay for water drainage,
Right.
even though it's not actually sewer, just because it's getting into the lines. He's looking for this grant money to fix these lines. And I'm like, well, how far away is the Walker County sewer? Why can't we connect to the Walker County sewer? Well, the Georgia Department of Transportation won't grant the right-of-way to build a pipe next to the road to the Walker County sewer system. So that's the solution. And it should be a state solution. I mean, Rossville's a part of Walker County. Walker County is a part of Georgia. It's a state highway that we could run the pipe down, but yet they're having to be dependent on the city of Chattanooga and their
Right.
sewer system. So there's ways of fixing things without just begging for more money. And
Right.
also the dangers that I see in grants is we see a lot with our school system, right? Someone gets elected to the school board and they're gung-ho, they're ready to make some change. And as soon as they get ready to make that change, oh wait, we're gonna lose this grant if you vote that way. So all the money controls our school system, and they get into our way. That's how the federal government has so much power on our states' rights a lot of times. It's just because, well, they have all the money.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. And, you know, I don't know how anybody could argue with your statement anyway. Don't count on me for grants, count it for less government. And I think it's misconstrued because it's, you know, when you follow the money, for example, and my wife, she works in the school system, and you know, these grant monies, they get a certain amount of money allotted. If they don't spend every penny of that money, they lose it, that kind of thing. So we've created this culture to where we're so dependent on this money, that
Right.
the handouts, that, you know. And so I've always been an advocate for less government, and that does not mean that you're not going to be able to give grant money or,
Right.
or allot money to people. So
Absolutely. Like
it's
if,
just
if we can get grant money, all the more the merrier.
Sure.
Right? I'd rather
Sure.
it be spent in Northwest Georgia than South Georgia.
Right.
But at the same token, let's not become so dependent on it
Right.
that we do dumb stuff.
Right, sensible solutions, right?
Right.
Put a pipeline in where you can, right?
Right.
Okay, that's good. I haven't heard much. That's actually the worst thing that I've heard, or the most negative Colton Moore thing.
Well, they're spending my opponents spent probably $60,000-$70,000
Wow.
trying to say that I'm anti-law enforcement in the
Okay.
last week.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So
Are you anti-law enforcement?
no, I have great admiration for law enforcement.
Okay.
But the problem is, you know, I'm a hawk on legislation. I read the legislation before I voted on it.
Right.
And there was one piece of legislation that it was a law enforcement bill that I had originally voted for, but it changed like 3 different times. And then the last time it changed, there was a paragraph added to the end of it that said anyone who intimidated or harassed a first responder shall be guilty of a felony, spend 1 to 5 years in a cage, and get a $5,000 fine.
Wow.
And to me, especially in Northwest Georgia, you know, we're a little hot-headed, and I remember a good friend of mine, his house caught on fire, and he's pulling up to the scene, and there's a bunch of firefighters out there, and he's trying to get to his house, and they're trying to stop him, and I mean, he's emotional, he's cussing at them, you know, who's to define what is intimidation or harassment? So to me, I didn't feel like that paragraph needed to be added into the legislation, and I voted no against the bill. Now, there were about 15 other Republicans or so that either walked out and didn't vote on it, and I could have probably done the same thing, and I would have never had a negative mailer about it. But my time in the legislature, I always wanted to have the courage to vote yes or no on any piece of legislation. I'm representing 50,000 people. I'm going to point it up or down.
Right. Absolutely. And just being a bail bond, a lot of people don't understand the law, because I get so many people that ask me about the law, and a felony is not just some small thing, you know.
Right.
I can understand if maybe they were talking about, okay, it could be construed as a misdemeanor, right?
Right.
A misdemeanor is but a felony is that stays on your record. It's permanent. It takes a long time. You know, it's very hard to get off, and
Right.
so that does seem a little overzealous.
You're right.
Let's go talk about this mailer real quick. We got in
Yeah,
here.
that's-
and I'll
that's
hold
what
this
I'm talking
mailer
about,
up.
yeah.
He didn't even see this, and it just came to our office today. I don't know. Georgia Coalition for Job Creation,
Which is a Jeff Mullis pack.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. This is who is the real Colton Moore, okay? And I'm going to show you the other side here so that everybody can see what we're dealing with. Went to Atlanta and turned his back on law enforcement. I think we just covered that.
Yeah.
Voted no on the Peace Officers Bill of Rights. Voted no on protecting law enforcement against the radical left. What does that even mean? Voted no on protecting law enforcement from false allegations.
So they make it look like it's 3 different votes.
Right.
And it was 1 vote, and you can clearly see they do make it in very small print right there that it all was just 1 vote.
Yeah, you really can't see this here, but they have this nice little handout here, and they're saying who is the real Colton Moore, and like he said, there's 3 X's on it. It makes it look like several things, but down in the corner, it's the exact same House vote. So
Yeah.
I think we covered that already. So on here, when we do these, we're not afraid at all. So if anybody's out there and would like to ask some questions, I know that there will be some people that will be watching it later. But if you get on the live stream, and I know we're doing it a little bit earlier, but you're going to be on WUTC TV tonight, right?
That's right, yeah.
So he's got to be going up there in a little while, so we decided to do this earlier. But I know that there'll be a lot of people weighing in. So Colton, what do you think? I know this primary to me is one of the most important primaries in the state of Georgia.
No doubt.
After everything that we've been through, and there's no doubt that our state is completely purple. You know, we've got all of these outside Hollywood money coming in, all of these outside entities that are trying to change the state. So tell me how, if when you were elected, what are your first goals to strengthening the conservative base in this state?
Yeah, I think one of the things we have to look at, and a lot of people aren't aware of it, and I've been preaching it from the time I discovered the horrendousness of it, are the film tax credits in Georgia.
Absolutely.
And you ask any common person, what is a film tax credit? And they think, well, the film industry gets a discount on their taxes. But it's far darker than that. So it's constitutionally, in the Georgia Constitution, the supreme law of Georgia, it's illegal to subsidize any industry. You can't take taxpayer funds and subsidize a business. So what the Department of Economic Development and flyers like this and where this type of money is coming from have created indirect subsidies. So the way a film tax credit works is Hollywood comes in, and just to give an easy example of it, they spend $100,000 on a movie here in Georgia. They get a 30% tax credit. Okay. Of all the tax credits that have ever been issued in Georgia, only about 2% of them have actually been used by the film industry. But they're transferable. You can sell them to whoever. So say you owe $10,000 on Georgia taxes, the bonding business is really good. You go to your accountant and you buy yourself a film tax credit. Now the current rate's about 90 cents on the dollar. So basically you would pay $9,000 and you would get a $10,000 voucher. Now that $9,000 gets exported out to Hollywood, and meanwhile the Georgia Department of Revenue gets a little slip of paper that's absolutely worthless. So I mean, how are we have a spending problem, we also have a revenue problem because we're subsidizing all of these industries. Now you go back to like the heartbeat bill in Georgia, right? There were 10 to 50,000 abortions a year in the state of Georgia. The heartbeat bill only passed by 1 vote. Guess who the biggest protesters were? It was Hollywood. We had all these actors and actresses who weren't residents of Georgia, but they were at the Capitol and they were leading the protests against the bill. And you could just see firsthand how this industry is changing our culture, our values, and it's costing the average household in Georgia roughly $220 a year in additional taxes to subsidize this industry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you heard it. I mean, Hollywood, Atlanta's the new Hollywood, and that's exactly the way they want it. Untapped resources, it's so much cheaper. We all know California's a cesspool, and so
we're subsidizing the film industry 4 times greater than that of New York and California.
that's insane.
Yeah.
That really is. And the thing about it is, we love movies, we love entertainment, but look at this culture shock of entertainment coming out. You see in the news about Netflix and all of these companies that are making this woke material that in the CRT, all of these things that are being taught in school. And what do you think about the Florida bill that DeSantis passed?
Oh, I love it.
Yes,
absolutely.
I'd love to see something like that.
I mean, people are waking up to the fact that Sodom and Gomorrah and the ways of that are coming into our school system, it's coming into our society. I mean, I heard just the other day in Dade County High School, there's a girl there who identifies as a cat,
Oh,
and
Lord.
she's trying to get a litter box put into the restroom. I mean,
That's
what type of society are we living in?
It's true, and it's going. That's the problem. It spreads. It spreads like a cancer, and it's spreading all over the place.
Right.
And I think in our area, you might agree, we're one of the most conservative areas in the country.
Absolutely.
This whole region. And I believe, and I have this conversation a lot because I'm not just a conservative and a Republican. I've been fairly liberal my whole life, but I mean, critical thinking. When you look at our situation up here, I follow a lot of things. I follow Ukraine, Russia. I listen to InfoWars. I do.
Yeah.
I have a tin hat in the closet.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is you see all these things going on, and we live here. Then I walk outside, and the birds are chirping, and the dogs are barking. Everything's good. I can go down to the store and still get some baby formula. And so I think we're in our own echo chamber up here sometimes, where we don't realize that, and that's kind of keeps people asleep.
Right. Right.
And that's what's so hard about getting your name out and people like that we need
Right.
in this to be the next our next representatives, because so many people are just like, I don't care.
Right.
And I'm like, look, it may not affect you right now, but it's coming. And I tell people this all the time. Atlanta is the new Hollywood, and it's growing from the inside out, and it's going to spread over this.
Yeah,
state.
people don't get involved in government until
No.
it starts affecting them in some
Yes,
way.
exactly.
We saw that with the 2020 election.
Yeah,
And everyone's getting affected now
Mhm.
in some
Mhm.
way. I was the
Yeah.
first elected official in
Yes.
Georgia to call for a special session to review the fraud in Donald Trump's presidential
Mhm.
election, back when every other Republican was just sitting on their
that's
hands.
right. He was the first. Remember that.
And it was, I had no qualms about it. I had, several conversations with leadership in Atlanta when that was going on. And they were just like, look, like we just had all these riots in Atlanta. If we have this special session, we could cause ourselves a war.
Sure.
And I was like, well, are we going to delay a war? Or let's
Sure.
just nip this problem in the bud right now?
Kicking the can.
That's
down the
exactly,
road.
yeah.
It's crazy to me. Now, I want to talk about that for a minute. I don't want to focus on the election fraud because we're here, nearly 2 years later.
Right.
2,000 Mules just came out, which I
Right.
still haven't got to see yet.
Oh, wow, you got to see it.
I know, I'm
Right.
waiting. But all of these things have come out. And the more that I think about it, and I have had so many elected officials tell me, you need to forget about that. You don't need to worry about the election. The election was fine, this and that.
Yeah.
You don't. When Donald Trump won, Hillary Clinton had an entire campaign against Donald Trump and a fraudulent election.
Right.
There were documentaries that HBO released on TV about how fraudulent these Dominion systems were years before
Yeah.
the 2020 election, and we dealt with years of Russia collusion.
Mhm.
All of that under the name of election fraud. Yet
Right.
in 2020, and we were there real time. I was there watching it when the State Farm Arena in Atlanta shut
Yeah.
down because of a water leak.
Right.
Going to stop counting votes.
Right.
And then the next day the spike. So obviously, without talking about election fraud, we know that there's something wrong.
No, absolutely.
And
And the solutions still haven't been done.
no.
The Republicans passed a piece of legislation that was supposed to solve all of our problems.
Mhm.
We still have drop boxes in
Mhm.
every single county in Georgia,
It's on the ballot.
which are just ripe for fraud.
Mhm.
What you'll see in 2,000 Mules, if you watch it, is these drop boxes were funded by private money. Like big billionaires, like Mark Zuckerberg, who basically went to all these different election commissions and said, we're going to give you some grant money, and all we need you to do is just put a drop box and bolt it to the ground. So they're privately funded. The legislature never asked for them. The people never asked for them. And it's a very spooky movie. I watched it with about 50 folks when it first came out. It was a very sombering experience walking out of that.
I bet. I'm a big fan of Dinesh D'Souza. I have watched 2 of his films in the theater, and I didn't get a chance to watch this one. But bringing up the voter correction bill, right? It was so funny to me when that bill came out, because I was scratching my head the whole time reading it, going, why did we even need to fix these things? Why were they not already in place?
Right.
And it is just, it's beyond me, and I don't want to be a pessimist about
Yeah.
it, but it's just like, Come on, people.
Well, I tell you, one of the things and I think I'll be a good advocate for if I'm elected, because I was a member of the legislature when we voted on the Dominion voting machines.
Okay.
I sat across the desk from Brad Raffensperger as he was ensuring me of the integrity of this system. Now you go back home and I would ask folks, what kind of election system do we really want? Well, some people want paper ballots, some people want to keep the digital. So the Dominion voting system was supposed to do both.
Right.
There's supposed to be 3 counts of the vote. The digital when you first voted, the piece of paper that you could individually audit, and then that final scan.
The final scan.
And then election day comes up, and I can't tell you how many reports of people saying, well, I voted, and then I got a piece of paper, but my candidates weren't on there, and no one at the polling place could help me with it.
Really?
And then, I just scanned in a barcode. To me, that was a breach of contract. Dominion has breached what our legislative intent was in passing that, because there weren't enough votes to pass it originally, and after reassurances, we passed it. So to me, if I get elected, I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, look, this was not our legislative intent. It's a breach of contract. Come pick up your machines, take them to another state, take them to a foreign country, but Georgia needs a new system.
Absolutely. I mean, if you go back, if you go into the Dominion voting systems, you'll find out they were already a subsidiary voting company. They just changed names. It's a Canadian company, and they've been doing the same thing all this time, but these contracts they've signed, for example, I believe when they first put in the Dominion voting systems, after the first year, they paid for all the expenses for maintenance fees and everything, and then after the first year, it bounces back to the counties. So I believe, I did a podcast episode on this, I think that Walker County alone is paying up to upwards of $30,000 a year for maintenance. On our Dominion. So we're paying for this stuff.
Unfunded mandate.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned the drop boxes, because I went and voted about 3 days ago, and that is actually something on one of the questions on the bill on the voting machine is how do you feel about the drop boxes? I'm like, no. I mean, I thought this was solved already, so it's not. There's so many issues, and that brings me to my next point. Unlike what I would consider like a Democrat liberal that just blindly follows the leader, conservatives are made up of more independent thinkers. We like to be more independent. We're family people. We don't like to depend on people, so we're more independent thinkers. And we've seen such a division on the conservative side over who are we going to vote for, who's going to be our governor, who we're getting behind. And especially and I have a theory on this, but for example, this is one of the first times that I can remember where I'm looking at candidates that I'm having a hard time deciding which person I want versus holding my nose and voting for the other one, And I think a lot of people, they don't think about that, especially at a primary. And I've told people, I said, this is the time to vote your conscience, right? Because whoever ends up on the other side of this primary is who we're going to be stuck with to vote for, right? So now is the time to vote our conscience. And it's a good feeling to know that there's so many good people that are standing up and ready to take charge.
I mean, not to speak is to speak. So speak now.
Sure, and so it's kind of exciting. I am worried about the governor race in this state, very worried because of all the political division. And I think that it's kind of a good thing, because I think if we can pave the way for true conservatives like yourself to get in office and get some of these rhinos out of the way, you know? I mean, call it what you will, but we all know that there's a rhino establishment. The people that you're talking about that just sit on their hands and they don't ever fight. They just keep giving a little and giving a little. And we have to stop that, because we are losing our country. We're losing the culture war. We're losing our morality, our freedoms. And so we have to get people in like you that are going to stand up. The Marjorie Greens, the last election, there were several that said we need 150 Marjorie Greens and 150 Colton Moores. If we had that, we wouldn't have any problem.
One of the things that I'm asked a lot on the campaign trail is, what do I think of Marjorie Greene?
Sure.
So we had some conversations when she first started running, and there's a lot of people who still have an objection to her because they're like, well, she just came into our district, and You know, I hear those objections, and a lot of people have objections. They say, well, she's just a, you know, the Strahan lady. Oh, she just wants to be a celebrity. Now, what I love about her, and what I always love to tell about Marjorie Greene, and what never makes the news, is she has been the most efficient set of breaks to the radical left agenda
Yes.
that history's yet to see.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
So we've got a Democratic-controlled Congress. We've got Joe Biden as president. There's 30 pieces of legislation a day being passed. They strip her of her committees, and I always love it when people are giving me objections about Marjorie, and they say, well, she got stripped of all her committees. Well, what did she do after that? She shows up on the House floor, and she says, no more of these voice votes. We're going to have roll call votes.
Right.
We went from 30 pieces of legislation a day to 5 pieces of
Yes.
legislation a day.
Who was it that was working with her? Massey, I believe. Is it Thomas Massey?
Yeah.
Man, I don't know if you follow Tim Pool at all. I got into Tim Pool this year, but he had both Marjorie Greene and Massey on.
I've
his
got Congressman
podcast.
Massey's endorsement.
That's
in this race.
awesome.
Yeah.
Massey's a fighter.
Yeah, no doubt. Just
and-
won by like 75% of the vote.
Yes, man, and he is insanely smart. He's like an MIT
Oh, yeah.
professor, and they were explaining how literally corrupt our government is as far as taking votes and absentee, and didn't matter if you're there or not. I
Yeah.
mean, I couldn't believe it. It blew my mind. And
Yeah.
Marjorie Greene was talking about how if they had to go to the bathroom, they had to have people watching, because the Democrats would have people watching to see, oh, she went to the bathroom, let's vote now, you know. That is insane that our
Yeah.
government is even doing things like
Right.
that, you know. So, yeah.
Not a very transparent process,
No,
and all she
no.
had to do was say objection
Yeah.
and put the brakes down.
Yep.
So to me, she has been the most effective
Yep.
Congresswoman in modern history.
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
agree. So,
Yeah.
Marjorie, she's a fighter, and man, I'm so proud to have her as our representative. And I know I worked in the union, and I talked to a lot of people. I got a lot of union brothers, and
Yeah.
they hate Marjorie Greene and people like that. And of course, they use the same diatropes, you know, oh, you're racist, oh, you're this or that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, come on, man.
Yeah.
We worked together for months. Get over it, you know.
Yeah.
And they know better,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, what's interesting too, if you look back just a little bit in history, the district that Marjorie represents now is roughly the same district of this fellow named Larry McDonald. So if you drive down 75 from Chattanooga to Atlanta, it's the Larry McDonald Memorial Highway.
Right.
And Larry McDonald was an equal fighter when it come to true conservatism. He was a Thomas Massey. He was, you know, he was a Ron Paul even before Ron Paul or those guys. And it's just so funny because he came from this area. You talked about this area being truly conservative, and it is, and it has been for generations.
Yeah, and we need to keep that. We need to continue our communities. We need to reach out to people of all races, colors, and trust me, I do all the time. You know, I talk to people because it goes beyond all this crap that we're getting spoon fed every day. You know, but we have to break that cycle. And I think more and more, I have a lot of Latino brothers that I've worked with from Dalton. Most of them were born here. A lot of them came here illegally. You know, I don't judge those people. I would have done the same thing, but they understand that in the end of the day, we have a huge problem at our border. We need to have a border protection, and they're more moral and family oriented people than you'd ever think.
Absolutely,
and
they understand what God-given rights are, natural rights. And you know, our Constitution was so well written with that negative set of documents being the Bill of Rights that said the government can't cross the line on these issues.
Right. Absolutely. So I do think that I'm excited no matter what. I'm excited for our country right now because what I believe, even the straw man polls right now are predicting at least Republican dominance of at least 3 to 5% over the Democrats. And like I think it was Tim Pool was saying that even whenever they report, you know, that a Democrat has a 5% lead, they still lose. So if they're actually admitting we have a positive lead, then it's a huge lead. So I'm very hopeful about.
But that doesn't mean you can't go out and vote.
No, and that's very, very important. This man needs your vote. Okay, you have to get involved. You have to get off your butt and vote. This is a primary, and so many people that just I'm not a smart man. I never have been a smart man. But people say, well, why do I need to vote? This is not the official vote. No, this is the primary. This is the one time that you can say, this is the person that I want in office. This is the person that represents me. Because at the end of the day, this primary is going to whittle everything down to whoever is going to carry on that torch and go to the next step, which will be the November vote. So now more than ever, you need to get your family, your friends, everybody around you, and talk about this, and appreciate that people like Colton are coming out, and they're taking, they're spending money and their time, and they're sacrificing to make this region better than it ever has been. And just like he said before, Marjorie Green is a 1 in a million that we have in our district, and she needs all the support that she can get. And I know you go back in history and you look at the past Republican politicians we've had in that were all scared of her. They didn't want anything to do with her until they found out how much she was liked and how much she was doing, and now they're all behind her, right? This guy's been behind her from the get-go. He's been one of the original people that if he were in that position, he would be out there fighting for you. And I believe that 100%. This is not somebody that's telling you something. We're already doing it before we were aligned in doing it. So
yeah, we can't trust just because they have an R beside their name that they're really Republicans.
Absolutely.
You know, the rhinos are real.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm glad to see the rhino name, people finally understanding what a rhino is, a Republican in name only, because that's all they are.
Right.
And the left loves nothing more than to see weak Republicans in office. Yeah. Because a weak Republican, in my opinion, is worse than a liberal.
Right. At least you know what you're getting with a liberal. With a Republican, you never know, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, before I go down and scroll, because I know we're getting a little on time here, is there anything I want you to just tell your message to these people? We're going to share this everywhere. Tell them why they should vote for you. You know, just take it away from them.
Yeah, I'm running for this because, like you, I'm fearful for our nation. I'm fearful for our state. I've lost faith in the federal government, and that's why we've got to get focused on these state elections, because it's going to be up to our state legislatures to protect our freedoms, to protect our way of life. And that's why this election is so critical. And a lot of people think, well, I'm a Republican, there's no Democrat challenger in this, I don't have to go out and vote. And like we were just saying, there's weak Republicans, and that's exactly who I'm running against. I legislate based on what is the proper role of government, just like Massey, just like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Everything outside of that is not the government's business. It's not the government's business to subsidize industries. It's not the government's business to try to take away our freedoms, and those things have to be left out of government. That's how I legislate. I'm not a transactional politician. And you know, we see that with like the $60,000 and $70,000 that's being spent to say that I'm anti-law enforcement. That's the big money establishment trying to get at the heartstrings of true Republicans and trying to pull the support away. So, you know, I appreciate you having me on here to get the message out. Be sure to go vote, though, because without those votes, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
Friday is the last day of early voting, and then Tuesday, May 24th, that's election day. You can go to your local precinct and vote. Bring a family member, bring a friend with you. I know a lot of times we get busy, but it doesn't take a second to go in there and vote, and then for 2 years you can rest assured that you did your part. You know, no regrets. If you're upset about how an elected official is doing business, well, at least don't be upset because you didn't vote one way or the other. Have the courage to go vote.
And as I always say, I know Matt McGregor will appreciate this, but Matt McGregor, you know I'm behind you 100%, but I'm not telling anybody who to vote for, okay? That's not my job. My job is not to tell you to vote for Colton Moore, okay? My job is to tell you, give you the information. It's up to you to decide, okay? But I will share my opinion with you, and I will put it to you this way. The last time that Colton Moore ran for office, when he was on the ballot, I voted for him. When he was not on the final ballot, I wrote his name in. So that's just how I feel about it, and I've always felt this way about this man. And And I wish we had a whole year before to prepare, you know. But now is the time, all right? If you want some real change, I'm telling you, this is the man right here, okay? So we're going to
Do we
go
have
down.
any questions?
Let's see here. We have some, yes. All right, let's go through some. Marianne, hello. Thank you for the sound check. And Marianne says, Colton, well.
Oh, my neighbor?
Is it Marianne Gobert? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it says, can you explain the video that's going around with your neighbor in Dade County?
Ah, okay. And all
Yeah.
the folks on the council stating that they all have been out there and have seen what she says is correct. Is this how you are going to do us in the state senate? All right.
Yeah, so that's, if they can't debate you on policy, they try to attack your personal life.
Okay.
My family farm, it's been in my family for generations. We had a new neighbor. She's from New York,
Okay.
and she did not like my cattle. She did not like my newly established single wide trailer that I live in. She had a tree limb that was growing on the property, and she wanted me to cut that tree limb down, and I said, I'll get to you, but it's not going to be anytime soon. She was not very patient. She was upset. There's a fence that was built 30 years ago that's been keeping cattle in.
Okay.
And she said, that's my fence, and you need to keep your cattle off of it. Well, she finds out that I'm out of town working an auction, and she cuts the fence and lets about $30,000 worth of cattle roam in the neighborhood. And that's when I turned into a crazy neighbor.
Okay.
So my property that I live on, purchased, it's been in the family for generations, has been a mixed use of industrial and agricultural purposes since the 1950s. There's been a junkyard on that property for as long as I can been alive, and so I moved the cattle away from her and moved the junkyard to her.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I mean,
Sure.
that's just, I mean, personal neighbor disputes are very disheartening. They're very personal, but you know, I have no recourse against her other than, you
Right.
know.
Sure. And everything you've done is legal, right?
Yeah.
And understand, like I said, I know this is a man. You know, these things
I
happen.
mean, this lady,
so-
she, I
Sure.
pulled into my driveway one day, and the EPA is drilling holes around my trailer. And she's called the EPA and reported that I have multiple families living in my trailer, and I'm dumping raw sewage onto the ground.
Wow.
I mean, she is very much a harassment.
Okay.
And so anyway, I just
Well,
put a
good.
junkyard next to her.
Sure, I
Yeah.
understand that, and I thank you for answering that.
Yeah.
That's what's great about these is there's no holds barred. So, Marianne, thank you for asking that question. And let's see, Ray Blankenship, tell it like it is, fellas. Ray, I love you.
Ray's a patriot.
Ray is awesome. Ray, he's got more kahunas than I do. I wish I could just break free and just really go with it, but I can't. Ray Blankenship, there's always two sides to the story. I'm not concerned about his personal life. I need him to vote for conservative values. It's kind of odd that this lady comes out about this now. Hey, it's true. Like I said, everybody has a personal life, and all things. None of us are perfect, but I appreciate him answering that question for us. And Marianne put, Marjorie Green is awesome. Could not agree with you more. I am not telling you to vote for this man, but I'm telling you that Marjorie Green will have yet another person right there beside her in her corner fighting every step of the way if Colton Moore gets through this primary, okay? So let's see, we have about 5 minutes left if anybody wants to put any more comments, and I know there's going to be, we usually get anywhere from 100 to 300 people that will go back and watch these videos.
Okay.
Normally it's better and later in the evening when everybody's home and off work, but we do appreciate those folks that were hanging out and that are hanging out with us.
Yeah, and if you want to find out more information about me, you can go to coltonmoore.com.
All right.
Have a full policy page. I guarantee you it's the most in-depth policy page of any elected official or any candidate for office in the state of Georgia.
Okay.
So we talk about nearly every issue under the sun.
All right. And how can we support you, or do you have any ways that we can give?
Yeah. So you can go to coltonmoore.com/donate,
Okay.
and you can use a credit card or a debit card.
Okay.
It would mean a lot, especially in these last few days of the election. I mean, we're being outspent probably 10 to 1 at this point. And we've got to get the message out there.
Right.
And campaigns are not cheap. So we've spent about $50,000 on this campaign versus about $150,000.
Right.
Yeah.
And you heard him, folks. He is being outspent, and because he is not what the establishment wants. And though usually the people that the establishment doesn't want are the people that I'm looking at most. So, all right. Well, listen, we're going to let Colton Moore go, and like I said, we're going to be putting this on Small Town Underground, so it will be shareable there through YouTube and Rumble, and it will, every Facebook group that I can post this to, I will. Tomorrow we're going to have Jim Coles on. It's going to be about 5:30. He's running for state rep. I do think that we'll have more people leading up to the 24th, and I'll take as much time as I possibly can to put these together. And it's up to you out there to share these, to make your own informed decisions, and especially if there's somebody that you want to vote for, you need to share this. You need to share this with as many people as you can, because we have to have everybody in this primary voting, okay? Don't take my word for it, you know. I'm not the kind of person that, I don't care who you vote for, all right? I'm responsible for myself. But I'm trying to keep this information out there so you can make an educated guess like we've always set out to do. And so I think the world of Mr. Moore, and he does have my personal support, and I appreciate you taking the time to come out here with us. And we're hoping we get through the 24th and we can shoot him right on up to November, okay? So thank you, everybody, and anything else?
No, if you have any questions, shoot me an email, colton@coltonmoore.com. or give me a phone call. My number is 423-508-2195. I only have one phone number. I've always had that phone number, unlike our last administration who had like 3 phone numbers. So I've been able to manage it so far. But if you have any questions for me, feel free to reach out anytime.
All right, and I'll repost the links on the groups. Thanks, y'all. Have a good evening.
All right, thanks.